Brand new episode of the Under the Lights podcast. This is a high school football podcast. This is a safe space. There will be no college football talk this week. Nothing happened last Saturday that we needed to discuss today. Obviously, I'm referring to that heartbreaking Iron Bowl that I nor Gary will discuss, despite what's on his letterboard back there. Gary, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm a little confused. What happened Saturday?
There was a game played at Jordan-Hare Stadium that was, depending on who you are and who your allegiance is to, you felt one of two ways.
Yeah. That thing is always crazy, but look, here's my main takeaway. We won't talk about Milroe's throw. We won't talk about coming out of a timeout, how Auburn chose to defend that, which was weird. But can we talk about it's an ending like that in Jordan-Hare, 10 years since the kick six and all that. We get to talk about this one for the next 10 years, right? That's how it works. As an Auburn fan, right? That's how I should feel now as an Alabama fan. I get to talk about this till 2033, right?
You can do whatever you want to, Gary. But anyways, Kyle Parmley, Gary Lloyd, Under the Lights, ready to talk about the last round of the high school football playoffs. There's been a lot of good stuff going on. In our Starnes Media coverage area, we are down to one team, Clay-Chalkville, as the Cougars advance to the Class 6A semifinals. But Gary, let's start in 7A because 7A last week played their semifinals. They have one less round because they've got half the teams. I was in Alabaster, saw Thompson take down Hewitt-Trussville in the semifinals, 21-10. It's just one of those games where, Hewitt had some chances. They played really well in the first quarter and a half, got out to a 10-0 lead, and then from there, Thompson asserted itself. So here's the numbers. Thompson's won state championship 4 years in a row. They're looking for number 5. This is their 6th consecutive state championship game appearance. This program just seems unstoppable. It's one of those things where, as well as Hewitt started out on Friday night, they would have liked to get a touchdown as opposed to a field goal on that opening drive. If they go up 14-0, maybe it's a little bit different, but the way that Thompson was able to control that game from about the middle of the second quarter on, Hewitt just kind of got stifled and could never recover. I'm looking at the stats that I took for the game. I had Hewitt outgaining Thompson. So the Huskies showed up. They were in their first, we talked about them being in their first semifinal for the first time since, 96? And they showed up and played well. It just wasn't quite enough against that behemoth that is Thompson, and Thompson will be heading to the state championship game to take on Central Phoenix City. We've seen that matchup in the state championship game a couple times, so it'll be cool to see that. But Gary, I guess, just final takeaways on what was a really good season for Hewitt. They end up 9-4. They had a great year. They got to the semifinals, which is a round further than they've been in a long time.
Yeah, it seemed like, it really looked like great defensive effort from both teams. And, we kind of talked about that leading up, about Hewitt needing to come out of the gate quickly. And, really, it seems like they did. You go down, you get a field goal, but you're up 10-0 on the road. You've got to feel good about that. But on the other side of it, we've also talked about, and I was talking to some people up in Muscle Shoals on the Clay-Chalkville sideline Friday about Thompson. They faced him, so we were talking about that game and talking about this matchup with Hewitt. And it's kind of what we've said all year about Thompson. Especially in these region games, like they played Vestavia in the playoffs. It's 14-14 at half, and then we know what happened in the second half, and we know what happened in the last 2.5 quarters of this game against Hewitt. Is you almost get, it's like you're playing well, but it's almost like you get lulled into this like false sense of security in a way. Like I know they're not like, hey, we're up 10-0, let's let off. It's not that. It's just Thompson gets you in a certain spot, and then they stomp on you. And I don't know how you I mean, obviously, no one knows how to get past them. We'll see if Central Phoenix City can. But even in a close game, they come out and it's like they flip some sort of switch at some point. And for Thompson, we thought, or I thought, it'd be in the passing game against Hewitt, and I think Seaborn threw for what 150, 160 yards, but
Yeah.
they really did it on the ground. And so, kudos to the Hewitt defense for limiting them, but it still wasn't enough. They're just really good team, and just a kind of a legendary high school program right now. And for Hewitt-Trussville, they'll look back on this and realize they did something really special, making it this far for the first time in a long time. But I don't think this is the ceiling for Hewitt-Trussville, whether that be in Region 3 in 7A or somewhere else down the line, depending on region shakeups or region or classification expansions or whatever happens down the road. And I think maybe sooner rather than later. Like, yes, you're losing Peyton Floyd, who is one of the best quarterbacks in your school's history. You're losing a lot of productive guys on both sides. But just this fall, we've seen what that 7th grade, 8th grade, and freshman team have all done at Hewitt-Trussville. So you've got guys that are coming up that really signify a really bright future for Hewitt-Trussville, and I think it's going to be probably sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I want to touch on a couple of things that you mentioned. I've witnessed it the last 2 weeks where Vestavia and Hewitt are playing well, and then it's just like Thompson gets to a point where it's like, all right, we felt it out. We know what we're up against. Now let's hit the gas and pull away. I mean, Josh Floyd was asked after the game if they let up after they got up 10-0, and that's not the case. I mean,
You didn't ask that, did you?
I did not ask that.
Man alive.
Of course, they didn't let up. They just the better team started asserting itself. And another point, credit to Hewitt's defense. The first time these two teams played, Hewitt-Trussville's defense was laughable. Big plays all over the place. No consistency. And in this game, they only gave up 250 total yards. No big plays. I mean, AJ Green, the running back, he carried the ball 30 times and didn't crack 100 yards. So, I mean, he scored twice. Trent Seaborn scored with his legs once, but they didn't give up the big plays in the passing game. And all Thompson had was they ran the ball with Green, and they had the short passes, whether it was the swing passes or the crossing route with Deuce Oliver. Now, granted, both that worked really, really well, but Hewitt made them earn it, and that's what they did. So, yeah, and like you said, great season for the Huskies. A 30-man senior class that did a lot for the program, won a lot of games. And I know Josh Floyd's going to really miss coaching his son Peyton as a quarterback. But there are 2 more Floyd boys on the way. Parker Floyd I think he recovered a fumble in the game the other night. So
he might be coaching the youngest at quarterback here in a few years. Jack is quite the 7th grade football player, so be interested to see how he progresses, if it's kind of that same kind of dynamic as Peyton, where he starts to grow and develops a passing game, and be really interesting to see this program over the next 4 or 5 years and what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. And we mentioned the other side. Central Phoenix City knocked off Mary Montgomery. So those 2 teams will meet in the 7A state championship game on Wednesday, December the 6th at 7 o'clock at Bryant-Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa. So I tried to convince Gary to join me for that one, but I will certainly be on hand. It's going to be a great one. So, Gary, that's what we got for 7A. Let's move on to Class 6A and the game that you were at Friday night. Clay-Chalkville takes down Muscle Shoals 44-27. It looks like Muscle Shoals scored a couple touchdowns in the fourth quarter that maybe inflated that scoreline a little bit, but the Cougars, I saw them against Thompson earlier this year, and Jalen Mbakwe scored 5 rushing touchdowns. You saw him this past Friday, and Jalen Mbakwe goes for 5 passing touchdowns. So what did you see out there?
I saw a passing game that I didn't quite expect. Like we've talked about that at times over the last couple weeks about this road that Clay-Chalkville has, and needing to. I guess the coach speak would be like being multiple and being able to kind of balance it out a little bit, throw the ball a little better. And this game, it was like almost a pre-planned deal. Like Muscle Shoals' defensive line is really quick and really effective. And so, Jalen Mbakwe talked to me about that after the game. I asked him, he throws for 300 yards. Not sure he's done that before. Throws for 5 touchdowns. He seemed genuinely shocked when I asked him if he had thrown for 5 touchdowns in his career before, little league, any of that. And he went, "I had 5 like that," and I was like, "Come on, you come on." Like, I was like, "The game's over. You won. Be real with me. You had 5." He was like, "I mean, no, I had no idea." I was like, "Okay, I'll believe you. How's it feel?" And I mean, it was just a focus for them. They knew the Muscle Shoals defensive front was going to be fast and effective, like I said, and they were early. I think Clay-Chalkville only had 30 something rushing yards at the half, but the passing game was just working every which way, whether it be Jalen rolling out, and throwing it deep, drop back passes, scramble and dump it off, swing, screens, everything. I mean, let me look. His touchdown passes were 24, 22, 61, 31, and 43 yards. These aren't flukes. It wasn't like they got down to the 2-yard line and he rolled out and threw it back the other way after the defense stretched. I mean, these were on deep balls. These were on crossing routes. I mean, he was throwing bullets. And I don't know how I could be more impressed with a guy who's already, we all know he's a 5-star guy. He's going to probably play in the defensive backfield at Alabama. We've seen him at receiver. We've seen him play DB. We've seen him do all those things. But I came away like, oh, he can do that too. Like I don't know if there's anything this guy can't do on a high school football field. So it was really impressive. Had a lot of guys get involved. Mario Craver had a big night. Marlon Compton had a big night in the receiving game. Corey Barber is a really good young receiver who scored that first receiving touchdown. So just an incredible offensive performance that I know it surprised me the way they scored. I wasn't surprised that Clay put up 44 points. It was just that they scored. Their first touchdown was a Taurus Chambers 2-yard run, and it was kind of like, okay, here we go. And then the rest of the touchdowns were all passing touchdowns. So that was impressive. I talked to offensive coordinator Stuart Floyd a little bit after the game, and I was like, Jalen had 5, like, and he same reaction. He had 5, and I was like, again, come on, Stuart. He had 5. And he's like, no. He's like, I'm up there thinking about the next play, and all that. So a big night in the passing game. Now defensively, you mentioned it. Some of those were later in the game, but the game it wasn't quite out of hand. There was enough time that you give up one here, and if Muscle Shoals they kept doing a little squib and pooch kick on every kickoff. If you fumble one of those, and they turn right back around and score, then you're looking at maybe a 1-possession game again. So there were some busts. Head coach Drew Gilmer talked about that after. He was like, defensively, he's like, we just didn't play very well. So they're going to definitely have to clean that up. In the secondary, keeping guys in front of you and tackling better. There were some big hits. Clay's, we've seen them all year. They're a nasty defense, but there were some plays, a lot of plays in the run game where Muscle Shoals they were just slipping off guys, and so they've got to wrap up better this week against a really physical Parker team. But all in all, to go on the road, to go over 2 hours north. I mean, we're almost in Tennessee, and go on the road and get a win like that by 17 points. And Clay's, hey, I'll say this: kudos to that community. They traveled really well to
Good.
Muscle Shoals. I was surprised. There was a lot of people in the stands and early. It was 6:15, and I'm looking around and I'm like, okay, Clay. And then at kickoff, their side's almost full. So kudos to that community, and hopefully they'll show up this Friday as well for a really really big semifinal game against Parker.
Yeah, absolutely. Touch on a couple of the other 6A games. You mentioned Clay-Chalkville is going to play Parker now. Parker beat Gadsden City 35-20. So Parker will head to Clay for the semifinal game this week. On the other side of the bracket, Saraland played number 3 Hillcrest. Big time quarterfinal matchup there. Saraland wins 31-21. Hillcrest tested them. They made Saraland earn it. And then the team that I told you guys at the start of all this that had the potential to make a run, Pike Road, gets past Benjamin Russell 31-28. So now Pike Road will probably see their road come to an end here as they go to Saraland here in the semifinals. In a moment, we're going to be joined by Mountain Brook head coach Chris Yeager to help us break down this Clay-Chalkville Parker matchup. His team, his Spartans, played both of these squads during the season, so he'll have a good perspective there. But before we get to him, I kind of want to touch on the what's going to be one of the storylines of this game is last season, Parker beats Clay-Chalkville 7-6 in the first round of the playoffs. You're looking at a Clay-Chalkville team that was as highly touted as the one this year. Like, they were expected to be almost a sure thing to get to the state championship game, and they fall in the first round of the playoffs. You know, neither one of us were there for that, but you read the stories from it, and you know, Clay-Chalkville was in a lot different position at this time last year than they are this year. That this time last year, they're trying to figure out what to do on offense, particularly at quarterback. I mean, this is the game that, you know, a few games earlier, they had kind of started feeling like, hey, we need to try Jalen at quarterback. But then he gets hurt, and so he's not available for the playoff game. And so they're kind of struggling to figure out what to do. And also a difference in that game is the fact that they couldn't kick a field goal or an extra point last year. Now they can. I mean, when's the last time Clay-Chalkville had a guy that could kick a 48-yarder like we saw on Friday?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe those teams back that, you know, when I first started covering Clay-Chalkville, like what was his name, Robert Green, someone like that, you know, back like 10 years ago, something like that. But yeah, I had that thought actually Friday night when I saw, you know, Anton Ellison kick that 48-yard field goal right at the half. You know, that was a key in that game. I mean, you go on to win by 17. If you're just a box score looker, you'd say, okay, Clay did what Clay does, and they did. But that was a 14-7 game. They get the ball back with like 30 seconds left in the half, and 2 big completions from Jalen and Bakwe. They get down like 5 seconds left, and they bring Ellison out. And I'm sitting there doing the math. I'm like, this is a 48-yard field goal. He got the leg for this. It was good from 58. I mean, he drilled it. And that's what I thought about. I thought about that Parker game last year where Clay scores, I think it was in the second quarter, they score on a passing touchdown and go up 6-0 and then miss the extra point. And I was like, what a difference a year makes, you know? So
Yeah,
this will not,
they had gotten to the point they were just going for 2. I mean, like
Yeah.
it wasn't even an attempt. Like it was just they went for 2 after every touchdown, and they failed that one, and that's what kind of bit them.
Yep.
But you
So
even think
this one,
about I think like before the last couple years when they really didn't have a field goal kicker, back in, I mean, I think you can go all the way back to Jerry Hood's final years, but there was a string of years where you had the Van Winkle brothers that just kind of spoiled you. Like the coaches at Clay never had to worry about the kicking situations. Like, well, those guys, they know what they're doing. They'll handle it. No big deal.
Yeah.
And they did. Like, you know, you handle the kicking, the punting, the kickoffs, you do all of it, and we don't have to worry about it. And then they graduated finally, both of them. And it's like, oh no, now we don't have a kicker. So
What do we do?
and I'll be interested
Yeah.
to see how much of the like how much of a mental hurdle this is. Like, how much will it be talked about in the locker room? How much will it be on the players' minds of like, this team came here last year just like this, and they put a really premature end to what we thought was going to be a great run, and it's over just like that. So I wonder how tough it'll be for Clay-Chalkville to kind of overcome that and see what they can do. And if they play tight, I mean, I'm just kind of curious to see how they approach it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think the biggest difference there, and I learned this Friday because I've been around Jalen and Bakwe at some games, but not a lot. But Friday night post game, you know how quick post game goes when you're talking to guys for maybe 5 minutes and you're moving on and you're going to write your story. But that was probably the longest I've gotten to stand on field and talk with him, simply because I don't know who else was there to cover the game. I mean, we didn't have TV cameras in faces. I just got to talk to whoever I wanted to just by myself. And I asked Jalen about that game last year, which we know he wasn't a part of. And I think it's easy to say that that's the biggest difference is that the 5-star guy is on the field. But I came away really impressed with his mentality, and I think you follow your leader, and I think he's your leader on the field. And the way he talked about it, he was like, I mean, it's a cliche and it's coach speak, player speak, but when a guy like that says it, if you're on that team, that's a guy you follow, that's a guy you believe, that's a guy you rally behind. He was just like, that was last year. He was almost like confused that I asked him about it. He was like, well, that was a different season. This is a new season. It's a different team. It's a different matchup. All that. This game stands on its own. And I know that's cliche, but sometimes cliches are true. And I think you ride a guy like that, and you listen to a guy like that during a week like this, and you can't really think about last year much. You focus on the task at hand. There's a lot of different playmakers out there for both teams, and I think this game should be a classic, just standing on its own. Last year notwithstanding. So, looking forward to seeing how it turns out.
Joined now by Mountain Brook High School coach Chris Yeager. Coach Yeager, have you been able to get away from football a little bit now that the season's over for you guys? What have you been up to lately?
Well, had a sensible Thanksgiving meal, and then on Friday, I had read a book called The 12-Hour Walk, and so I went on a 9-hour walk, and so anyway,
Didn't stop for 9 hours?
Didn't stop for 9 hours. Well, I went on a bike trail, my favorite bike trail. It's called the Duck Creek Watershed. It's up in North Alabama, and so they've got mile markers, and so you don't take any kind of technology, no cell phone or anything like that, and you just take a notebook and just jot down your thoughts. And so every mile, I would stop for 5 or 10 minutes and just jot down things, ideas, and stuff like that. It was phenomenal. What was incredible is just getting away from my phone. It was like, you talking about a vacation. It was unbelievable. But anyway, that was a lot of fun.
So are the thoughts more life in general, football? Like what comes to your mind?
It's just, really the things that's a great question, Kyle, but the things for me that just surfaced is things probably that I needed to address. For me, it was things like, I had read a book called, one of my former players, he's a West Point grad, and he's an officer in Germany. And so he'd sent me the book Legacy. And so in the book, it's about the New Zealand All Blacks. And so one of their core values is humility. And so I got to think, how does humility figure in, to a team? And that's just sort of been stuck in my head. And so I did a lot of thinking on that. They do a thing, sweep the sheds. And so if you're a captain, it's the greatest honors to get to sweep the shed, get to sweep the dressing room, after practice, after a game or whatever. And so anyway, it's sort of on this walk, I'll just sort of tell you one of the biggest things that came to me, on the walk that I got to thinking about humility in a team. And so the biggest thing about humility is it's not about me. It's about others, which I think it's not about me may be some of the most important words, on any team. And so it took me some time to think about that. And it's sort of centered on that now. How do you get there is another question. But I think that's, if you're going to have a championship culture, humility is important.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, as it pertains to football, your program has been on a great run the last several years. Made it to the state championship game last year, semifinals a couple years before that. Now that we are in the semifinals for Class 1A through 6A, what kind of things have you learned over the years about getting a team ready for that moment when they're playing on a big level like the Class 6A semifinals, like Clay-Chalkville and Parker are about to do this Friday?
Well, for me, Kyle, and for our team, and I spent a lot of time. There's a sports psychologist. He's an incredible guy, Dr. Rob Gilbert. He's at Montclair State. And so I'll be honest with you, for years, I've really prepared for that moment. And the thing that, that Dr. Gilbert says, and this is sort of the approach that we took is, it's not punching your ticket to the championship game. It's round 4. When you play the first round, it's round 1. Round 2, it's not the quarterfinals, it's not the semifinals, it's just round 4. And the team that can play, the team that plays relaxed, and they say that it's the best team doesn't always win, and it's true. It's the team that plays the best. And so to play relaxed and get in the state of flow and focus on the moment instead of the scoreboard and the outcomes and stuff like that usually results in teams playing the best and having the best chance, of advancing, so I think that's one of the biggest things that I've learned, in being in that moment.
Yeah. Now, as it with Parker, let's start with Parker. So this team, we kind of knew all summer, like, hey, this is going to be a team to watch, and they're into the semifinals for the first time since 1989, I think. So this is quite a landmark achievement for their program. Low scoring game when you guys played. I know there was a couple plays here and there that, go the other way and you guys are coming out on top. But this Parker team, they look like they really love to run the football and they love to play defense. So just kind of interested to hear what y'all were kind of game planning for and then how you thought it played out when y'all played them.
Well, we knew that their defensive front, their front 4, we had just finished playing Hoover. And so I thought, well, you're not going to see a better front than Hoover's front. And then you turn on the film for Parker and you go, well, I was wrong. Let me, recalibrate on that. And so, you got, Jeremiah Beeman and you got Jordan Crawford and, and a lot of people, they don't, you overlook, you got number 31, Jeremiah Hall. And so anyway, the front's phenomenal. And so we went in playing them, whatever it takes to neutralize the front. And I do know this, people that when we'd watch them, you run straight into that front and it is like it's like walking into a wood chipper. You better forget it, and nobody has had success. I mean, and I've watched them, I followed them in the playoffs. And so we said, we need to make those guys, relocate and move. And so I was just really concerned that they were capable of establishing a new line of scrimmage. We're a big outside zone team. So they their front played in a 2-point stance the whole night long, which was a little bit different. Hoover had done that. And so, they said, we're going to run with you. And so anyway, but they did a great job. And then, you've got in the secondary, they've got guys, Alford, who's capable of locking down man and stuff. And so anyway, and then, gosh, they're talented on both sides of the ball. Malik Muhammad, of course, he didn't start against us. The one that started against us was Jennings and played phenomenal, but the thing that they did against us, they played the cleanest football game, no turnovers. I think they had 1 procedure penalty and we turned the ball over 3 times and had 10 procedure penalties, and so they played as clean as you can play. They played an incredible game in the offense, defense, and kicking game. They played a complete game against us and were very deserving of winning that game.
What's it like so looking back at their game last week, Alford had a couple of punt returns that really turned the game. So is that one of those things where it's like, it's really easy to just kind of like, all right, well, we got to punt it away. You kind of lose track. You're thinking, all right, the defense is about to go on the field. Like, how conscious do you have to be of, hey, they've got a dynamic guy back there. We really need to make sure we execute this punt right.
Yeah. And a lot of people say you just punt it away from him. That's a lot easier said than done because, that punter, he's got to catch the ball. He's got a rush coming. And so, yeah, and now you're going to aim it. And so most of the time, the punter, I just got to get this thing out of my hands, and then they do a great job of blocking too. That's one thing, especially early in the season, they block some punts too. And so, you're sitting there and you've got to decide, we max protect this thing, but now we don't have as good a coverage. And so that's an incredible weapon for them. I mean, it's an unbelievable weapon that they can do both of those. They've got speed off the edge, and then they've got those guys in the middle that that get great push. And then they've got a dynamic returner. And so, I think that part of their punt return is just it's an unbelievable weapon for them.
Coach, on the other side of that, y'all just played Clay-Chalkville in the playoffs, 17-13 game. What was kind of the mindset going into that game, that matchup, to kind of keep it low scoring? Was it compressing the game? What was kind of the mindset there to try to go in there and upset the Cougars?
Well, Gary, the one thing we wanted to do was to limit. We went in and said it, and we made it known. I mean, I was interviewed, and I said it in the paper, that we need long, sustained drives, and we need to keep that offense on the side. And so, going into the game, we said, let's make sure that clock runs down, 5 seconds or lower every time, and never snap that ball. Give our defense time to rest, keep them over, on the sideline, and let those guys get cold and stiff, and not as much as possible eliminate that ball hitting Mbakwe's hands. Don't give him many opportunities, because I tell you, the more bullets you put in the chamber with him and spin that revolver, it's just a matter of time. I mean, and so we said, let's just eliminate the number of times that we do that. So we shifted, we motioned, and we did our best to try and keep him on the sideline. When he did get on the field, we knew that he's an incredible runner. And, we sort of, in between the 20s, we played safe, and they would chew up and let them run in between the 20s. When the field shortened, let's play the run. And so anyway, they had their success and stuff, and they played a clean ball game as well. They had threw an interception toward the end of the game that gave us another opportunity, but other than that, they played a really, really good game. But they're so good on defense. They're so fast. I mean, they're the fastest defense that we've seen all year long.
Yeah. Do you think that kind of formula, like you talked about, and the strengths that Parker seems to have, it seems like it would be a tough matchup for Clay-Chalkville facing this Parker team?
Well, when we played Clay, we looked at the playoff game last year where Parker beat them, and Parker really was frustrating for them. That Parker could, and it's when you're an offense and you're used to scoring 40 or 50 points a game and running up and down the field, and somebody keeps the ball away from you, and then somebody, it's extremely frustrating. And so watching them last year, Parker got them out of their game, and so I think Parker presents an incredible challenge for them. They're going to have a mindset. I think that the way Parker plays, their opportunities are going to be reduced. So you're going to have to maximize on them. You're going to have to be very patient, not get frustrated, and the pace of the game is going to go different than what you're used to it being. So I think that Parker will be, like I said, an unbelievable challenge for them.
And Coach, you mentioned being in North Alabama. I was in North Alabama this last week as well for that Clay-Chalkville at Muscle Shoals game. Not sure if you caught it, not sure if you read about it or what, but Clay-Chalkville comes out, Jalen Mbakwe throws for 300 yards in a lot of different ways. I mean, they were hitting the deep ball, they were hitting the screens, pre-planned passing plays. I mean, it was wild to see, knowing what we've seen out of Jalen Mbakwe. Throws for 5 touchdowns, all of them 20-plus yards. Does that, if you're Parker coach Frank Warren and you see how they kind of carved up Muscle Shoals in that way, does that change your preparation at all? Do you split focus between run and pass? What does that do for you as a head coach when you see that they can play the passing game and play it well?
Yeah, that's a great question, Gary. My college football coach he helps a little bit with Muscle Shoals, and so he's retired now. And so he said, what's the key to beating Clay? And I said, I don't know if there's a key to beating Clay. I said, but I tell you one thing, I would not let Mbakwe beat me with his legs. He'd beat me throwing. And so anyway, when I watched the game, I thought, well, I don't know about that, but here's the thing about Clay. You know, you're darned if you do and you're darned if you don't, because their offensive line is an incredible offensive line, you know, and the thing about the offensive line, you know, McCroy's gotten all the attention because he's getting a lot of the recruiting offers, but you know, Brady Phillips, their center, is to me, he's the best high school center I've seen, you know, in high school this year. Their offensive line is exceptional. And you know, the Osley kid, he does a great job running the ball. And so, and then Mbakwe. And so if you're going to sit there and you're going to back up and play those guys soft and let them run the ball, they're going to beat you a death by 1,000 cuts. And so, you know, are you going to let that happen? So, you know, last week to me, man, he played just an unbelievable game. And so the answer to your question is, Gary, I don't know what you do. You know, I mean, he's gotten better every week. In Mbakwe's, he's improved every week. If you look at him early in the year throwing, you know, he looked like he was serving up a pizza. And that young man has become a proficient passer. He's not a thrower; he's a passer now.
Yeah.
And and that's such a great tribute to him and to Drew, you know, for preparing him. I mean, he's just a totally different athlete now. They've done a great job developing him.
Yeah, and obviously this game is a lot different than the Parker Clay game last year. You know, Mbakwe was out, there are injuries, other things going on. You know, every game stands on its own. If this was a rematch for your guys, you know, like how do you approach that mindset wise with your guys when you have a game that, like, you know, maybe you lost the previous year or in the regular season and now it's the quote unquote rematch? How do you keep them focused on the task at hand?
Well, it's going to be emotional for their kids last year, you know, and so there's, you know, the big thing is you have to be very careful. There's so many things that go into the game. My approach is, don't make this about a revenge game. It's this game, you know, because win, lose, or draw, what we do this year is not going to affect what happened last year. What happened last year happened last year. And so we've got to let that go. And it's all about performing now. So let's don't invest mental energy. Let's don't invest emotions in something that's not going to affect the outcome of the game, which revenge that's just not a good motivator, you know? And so I think that's the psychological approach to that game, you know? So that's how I would, you know, that's just my thoughts on it.
Now, if you're playing a semifinal game, would you rather be at home or taking your team on the road to play that game?
I'd always rather be at home, but now talking to Drew, and if you look at their scores, Drew does not like being out. He prefers to be away. You know, Clay has played better away than they have played at home, you know, and so I'm a little surprised that he didn't try to move it to Parker, you know, to be honest with you. But anyway, they've got a great history of playing on the road. And then, so it's going to be interesting to see. Last year was the game played at Clay last year?
I believe so, because it was first round playoff
I
game.
think it was.
It was at Clay.
I think it was. Yeah, that's exactly right, because Parker was the fourth team. That's right. It was played at home. So, you know, anyway, I know that I know he likes playing on the road, talking to him.
Now, they played 2 home games during the regular season, and this will be their 3rd home playoff game.
Wow.
Yeah. I can't fathom that, like a regular season where, like, all they played at home this year in the regular season were the Valleys. They played Shades and Pinson at home. Everything else was away.
Wow. Unreal. That's unreal.
Yeah. So can't wait to see how that one goes. Coach, before we let you go, any initial thoughts on the 7A game between Thompson and Central? Seems like that's going to be a heck of a matchup.
Well, you know, every year it seems like everybody talks about the talent at Central and before, you know, it was at Auburn, and you know, and the thing that Thompson does, they just do they seem to outprogram people. You know, it's like you'd said before, you know, the quote unquote underdog seems to compete there for a half or so, and then Thompson, they're just Thompson, and they beat you, you know. And I tell you, the thing that it comes down to me, like, this is what Thompson does so good, you know, and I think this is sort of the difference in the Clay and Parker game. You know, everybody talks about the stars, the guys that are getting recruited or whatever, but these playoff games, they come down to those guys that don't have any stars beside their name. The team that has those guys that play the best, that have one star beside their name or two stars or no stars, a guy that may be the 11th guy when you start ranking them. Those guys from the like 7 down to 11 that play the best and perform the best, those are the teams that win. And that's what Thompson, to me, does. They do such a great job of developing those players, and it's just like, somebody was asking me about the Parker Clay game. And I said, people don't think about, on Clay's defense, they know about D'Angelo Barber, but nobody knows about Nicarius Allen or the other linebacker, Carlos Ivy. Nobody knows about it, but how those guys play, they carry those guys are the foundation of your team, and they carry your team, so that's sort of what I think about Thompson. Thompson just out programs you because they develop all the players. It doesn't matter if you're a second team guy, 13. Think about how the guys that they've had that come in as backup roles and how well they perform. It's just because they out program you. They do a great job developing at every level.
Tell me if you don't know, but is Nicarius Allen, is he 49 on Clay's defense? I don't have the roster in front of me.
Okay, he's number 13, and he's one of my favorite players because I tell you what I love about him. And the reason he caught my eye, and Carlos Ivy's the same way. The reason they caught my eye is this: when the play doesn't go to their side, how do you play? And those guys, I have never seen guys play so hungry and vicious. Yeah. Now I like 49 is Pickett. I like him too.
Okay.
But that's what Clay does so well to me. Like Clay, the thing that they do when they're kids that aren't involved, they're receivers too. Like you look at on offense when the ball's not coming to you and the ball's on the backside. How are those guys on the backside playing? And those guys play like a bunch of hungry jackals. I mean, I've never seen anything like they get after you now. Yeah, they're fun to watch.
Yeah, because I didn't know, I couldn't remember his name, and I don't have the roster in front of me, but 49 at Muscle Shoals the other night, he was disruptive. I mean, a couple sacks, couple tackles for loss, he was all world Friday at Muscle Shoals. So kudos to him.
Yeah, it's amazing when you play hard. The great thing about football, the game of football honors the guys that hustle, and eventually, if it's not your night, just keep hustling. Eventually your night's going to come around. So that's what I love about football, especially high school football.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Coach, we really appreciate you coming on with us today, helping us kind of talk through that matchup. Gary and I will both be out there Friday night. Hoping it's a great one. But any more epiphanies that you may have on these long walks that might help me in my life, feel free to offer suggestions. I'm always open to any of that. So it's a great time of year, the last couple of weeks of the high school football season. But Coach, we really appreciate it.
Kyle, it's been my pleasure. Gary, thank you.
Yeah, appreciate you, Coach.
Yes, sir.
All right, thanks to Coach Yeager for coming on and helping us talk through that game. I think we'll both be out there this Friday. So
should be.
It'll be a fun one. If you've ever been to Clay-Chalkville, the sidelines are a little tight, but we'll have a good time. It'll be a whole lot of fun. The Class 6A state championship game will be on Friday, December the 8th at 7 p.m. at Bryant-Denny Stadium. That'll wrap up the Super 7, kind of the last game. So hopefully it'll be a good one. We'll see whether it's Clay-Chalkville Parker, Sarah Land Pike Road, which of those two teams will square off in the state championship game. But Gary, I say let's do this again next week when we've only got state championship games to preview. So I think that means I'm gonna expect all of your notes on the 1A, the 2A, the 3A, all 7 championship games, and I'll handle the flag championship games. How about that?
Oh yeah, you handle that one. I'll handle all the classifications of football, and I should see you out there this Friday night. You're writing the thing. I don't know what I'm gonna do on the sideline. I guess I'll just bother you or something.
You'll probably feed me lead ideas that I will turn my nose up at.
Turn your nose up at. You should use them.
Maybe if the right one shows up. But all right, that does it for this one. Enjoy the games Friday night. Hopefully we'll see some of you out there at Clay. I always say stop by and say hello. You should do that if you see one of us. But thanks for listening today. Gary, thanks as always. We'll catch you next time.